Good afternoon from here in Paris, and thank you for joining us for today's Siemens Global webinar. My name is Caroline Maître, and I will be your host for this event. Today's topic, we will be looking at speed up innovation in consumer products industry with integrated program and lifecycle management. Today, I am delighted to welcome as our speaker, Mr. Frank Brando. So I will give a very brief bio of the speaker, and we will be ready to start. As the Director of Consumer Products and Retail, Frank is responsible for interdepartmental cooperation within Siemens, including sales, services, and product development. He provides technical leadership on large, complex customer initiatives, offering architectural oversight, a broad solution overview, and market value definitions based on having more than 12 years of experience working with prospects and customers in CPG, FMCG, and related domains, and 20 years of experience with product lifecycle management solutions. All right, so without further ado, I will hand over to Frank.
Thank you very much. So welcome everybody to today's web call. Seems very proud to present today integrated program and lifecycle management, and for the next 45 minutes I'm going to talk about that subject, hopefully introducing a little bit what we intend to do in here, what we answer in terms of market needs, and how the solution works in detail. So the presentation I'm going to give is structured in 3 chapters. First, we will look a little bit about the current challenges. I will talk about the concept behind integrated program and lifecycle management next, and then how the solution really and actually works in reality. Having said that, the first slide I have is a quote from Bain & Company that did a very, very good report about the state of the industry last year. What will matter most in the years ahead is speed and adaptability. I believe in terms of events of this year, this was never even more true. Even those people will not have anticipated what kind of adaptability was necessary in this year. So even before, life for many of the larger companies was pretty difficult. This year, it has gotten out of boundaries, really. So reacting to what is happening, not only in terms of completely changing consumer demand, but also to adapt to the changes in the industry are the definite most important elements that we can actually do. The performance analysis of the 34 of the world's top 50 consumer good companies shows that 85% of those big companies have seen a decline in either revenues, profits, or both. That is pretty strong. So we're really talking about a crisis in consumer goods even before of the crisis with the virus commonly known as the corona strain. So there's a lower growth in previously booming developing markets. For the large acquisitions, we are selling or carving out parts of the business. We have product categories that go into disruption. In most markets, large brands have lost share to local incumbents and small insurgent brands, and the pressure and expectations from the market have intensified. Especially the last point is strongly connected to the rise of consumers acting in social media. So in social media, suddenly it's not the companies really directing consumers towards buying their goods. It's consumers themselves educating them by what is currently trendy, setting their own trends, generating their own interests, and all of that forces companies to actually start adapting to what is happening in the market. They lose a little bit of the ability to really influence the market itself. Technically speaking, it should be pretty straightforward to really react to those situations. So what executives are currently challenged with is 4 major elements. First of all, especially larger companies act very, very disconnected, blocking the innovation capabilities in their companies. So there's a lot of departments that have to take care of the product life cycle from the idea to the shelf, and many of them are acting very, very disconnected. the overall implication is not only that it slows down the complete process, it does make intellectual property inaccessible. It might actually lead to pretty great risks of not meeting the windows of opportunities that are defined by the market itself. The next piece is that assets are very, very often recreated and not reused. We see that very often. You have a very good base product in a couple of markets, and you want to have a local variant of that product in a different market. So what happens? The local designers, developers, and engineers are looking for the original assets. And typically, the effort finding those assets is so incredibly high that they start recreating them just to save some time. So obviously, this is not just a waste of effort. It's also risking brand consistency. So what we need to have is a better way of really transporting all the relevant assets to those people and not force them to really spend a lot of effort searching for those informations. The next piece is something that is very often not very well maintained. It's that planning is not very flexible. Many companies take a one-size-fits-all approach and tend to do a little bit of micromanagement, and that stops individual departments from unleashing their full potential. When we look into the market, many companies have large or medium-sized standard plan templates. It might be the occasional Microsoft project file, very, very often, and actually it's an Excel file. So instead of really asking a department which way it would prefer to deliver what it's expected to do, those plans are just applied very often in a phase gate approach on the project level. And all of that naturally is very difficult for those departments to consume. So the missing flexibility combined with a disconnection of departments is adding a further level in here, because it's not only the individual components that are providing a challenge, it's a combination of all of them. The last element that I would like to mention is that change is not really well communicated. Change happens fast, and we all know that change happens all the time. Even right before a launch, it might be necessary to actually make a change, probably in the specification of a product. Now, what happens after that? So typically, the change is communicated by email, or you might put a fresh document in the new version on a repository, but it's always limited in reach. And it's also limited in the assessment of the impact the change has. So typically, the person doing the change is not fully aware of all the people that are dependent on that change and how to incorporate that best in the organization. So it's not only that some information might be wrong in the manual. It might be that the risk of recall is rising because of this. We see a surprisingly high percentage of first launches of products in the market that actually have to be recalled. So, and we have to consider that the recall itself actually is still the positive element. It would be worse if the products would actually harm consumers, which we want to avoid at all costs. So all of those four challenges was what drove us to really answer the market with a new approach. What we did is we have a general approach in the market that is about what we call the digital threats. You might have heard from the Siemens solutions that we are approaching all companies with the digital enterprise, breaking down into the product twin, the production twin, and the performance twin. For the consumer products and retail industry, we have 5 core digital threats that support that breakdown in the digital industry. One of them is the integrated program and lifecycle management, and we have smart product and process design, production design and optimization, flexible manufacturing, and the traceability and insights. Integrated program and lifecycle management, we consider the supporting platform and kind of the backbone of all the other solutions. So this is keeping all of those elements connected together. We generally describe integrated program and lifecycle management as a digital thread approach to initiative execution that enables speed and agility through integrating, adapting, and orchestrating relevant business processes. What does that mean? So in reality, we will encounter a lot of roles inside of an organization. So at the beginning, there always should be the customer. So when the market manager is approaching the customer, they're all placing interesting questions. So what do you want? When do you want it? And the market analyst might ask, who are you? And all of those questions are stored in email, they're stored in Excel files, they're stored in some repository somewhere on the intranet or even only on a local hard drive. And it's not only those few people that are participating in the overall product lifecycle. We have brand managers, the portfolio managers. All of those people essentially tell the project manager that they have to deliver the perfect product for that customer. So the project manager gets in contact with the discipline leaders, gives them a plan. The discipline leaders will get back to their subject matter experts to actually create those deliverables. But if you look at the distance in between the customer to the subject matter expert, the subject matter expert is the one person that has to execute and find the perfect deliverable for that customer that really serves all the needs. But the information might be 3, 4, or 5 people away. So the original information that you need to have access to might take a lot of time to access. The first step we did in integrated program and lifecycle management is that for every role, we identified a number of key information entities and connected those. So we're talking about projects, we're talking about programs, we're talking about the actual products in here and the deliverables connected to that one, and the brand hierarchy itself. In context to the general solutions available on the market already, we are taking the approach that there is no distinction in between solutions for that overall approach. So we don't want standalone solutions which might be best in class for one of those subjects. We want one solution that really combines and integrates all of those elements. And it's not only the big ones. So it's not only the project management or program management piece in here. All that information further breaks down into related information. So we're talking about trend analysis, demand analysis, risk and opportunity management, all the timeline and roadmap management. We have the bill of material, the bill of process, the line information, and even down to the plant and the plant performance. Everything needs to be considered connected in that way of integrating program and product lifecycle management. It wouldn't be enough actually to stop here and say we have one model of connected information. Yes, the connected model already provides a number of very important benefits. So the subject matter experts working on a deliverable, they can just trace the relationships over to the discipline specifications, to the SKUs, to the project request, and to the original idea. So in just 5 relations, they can find the original information. Still, that vast information network, they have to travel more or less manually. And this is something we want to avoid. So what we did in addition is that we incorporated the full product life cycle and projected that onto this information to give one seamless picture about how all of those business processes connected to the individual entities connect to each other. So what we did is we identify a couple of major areas. The overall approach will be orchestrated by program, project management, initiative management, and ideation. Those are the elements providing planning information, providing the roadmaps containing targets and everything else. On top of that, program and project management are supported by what we call the brand hierarchy. The brand hierarchy is really a hierarchy ranging from the corporate brand itself, breaking down to product segments or families, going to the product brands, to product lines, and the individual products. We use the brand hierarchy as the backbone of information to store every relevant piece of information like brand standard assets, our strategies, and many more elements. So every time a project manager, product manager, or portfolio manager want to get more insights about responsibility and the availability of information of a brand, they just start at that brand hierarchy and can access them in a very easy, straightforward, and simple fashion, including the discovery of everything that was created before. So once you want to have a local variant of a product, you just go to the brand hierarchy, find what was originally created in whatever region, and have the opportunity to copy that information from there directly. Down on the product life cycle, you can see that we have a number of phases that are considered most important for the overall product life cycle. So starting with the idea, we first enter a capture phase where we capture the original requirements connected with the idea. We do trend analysis, demand analysis, and we actually have the possibility as well to compare that to a competitor database. After that phase, essentially market analysts will go into discovery. In discovery, we want to make sure that the investment in that idea really is justified. So we typically do a market analysis, build a business case with a forecast, and also identify the window of opportunities. The responsibility for those two initial phases typically lies with marketing. And now you can see the big difference in between other approaches. We are able to take that information defined by marketing, especially the window of opportunity, and project that onto program management to help identify the correct targets on the roadmap for those products. So instead of having disconnected information, it's all connected with each other, with people that know precisely what needs to be provided to that big picture view. Once the idea has been accepted, the next phase will start. The idea will essentially launch the creation of a project, and in the project we can work on claims, SKUs, and other elements. In the digital charter, we'll go and have a development brief, a process group plan. All of that essentially is being approved, and then we move into product design, process planning, production engineering, production execution, and validation in a concurrent approach. As benefits, the value created by all of this, we did some tremendous effort to make a lot of automation of the project initialization. So we really believe that we can speed up that project initialization process by at least 3 times. If you consider project setup as it's done currently, we typically encounter a time span of 1 or 2 weeks that are necessary to set up projects. So it might not sound like a big deal to break that down by, let's say, 5, 6, or 7 days that are really saved by having better automation in this place and better agility and flexibility. But if you consider the amount of projects that are typically done every year inside of the organization, that number really multiplies up very fast, providing a very, very direct return of investment in investing in our solution. The next part in here is that we believe that 40% less redundant assets can be created during product development. We don't want duplicates of information. If it's really that easy that within a few minutes, instead of 1 or 2 months, you can find all relevant and necessary assets, or even have somebody point you through that information, then you don't need to recreate all that information. The effort is not wasted anymore, and it's actually a lot of information that is typically recreated inside of organizations. The non-value efforts are adding on top of this one. So very, very often, the project manager is trying to execute tasks that are not really relevant because it's not their responsibility. So the micromanagement that is really embedded in those big and bulky project management templates, it should be distributed responsibility. The actual department leaders, like the head of artwork development, head of R&D, and all those other people, typically know very, very well how to execute and deliver in time. So instead of making sure you have a super detailed plan, share the responsibility with those people, make sure that you find the optimum approach for every department individually, and then really run that execution of the process. So 15% of reduction of the non-value effort by better collaboration, making sure we have a well-adapted plan should be actually an easy target to achieve. Overall, that means that we consider it's possible to have a 1.5 increase in product variance that can be handled by development, obviously giving you a much better approach on the needs of markets, and consumers today are calling for product personalization and a lot of other different subjects that really need that type of additional capacity. How does that really work in the process? So technically speaking, everything that triggers the process can be considered a change. The change we need to carefully analyze, we need to define a response, we need to set up the projects, we need to identify all necessary deliverables, then we adapt our plan to those deliverables, and we do the concurrent execution in here. The sequence of boxes that are displayed in here is not random, obviously. What's very important to notice is that we actually work on identifying the deliverables first before we do the plan. We call that deliverable-driven planning. If you speak about that out loud, it actually makes sense. First, you want to know what you need to deliver, and then you're doing a plan for this one. Typical standalone solutions that are not connected over the product life cycle, they will give you a plan, and the expectation is that the plan somehow will result in all the necessary deliverables, which seems like a stretch. Now, if we look at our changes, there's tons of different reasons that can come to change. So it might be a new trend, improved production capacities or capabilities, changing material prices, different market opportunities, new regulations or other things. Let's assume for a second that there is a new trend in a market. So what I want to do when that change is incoming, that I check my market analysis and I see there's an impact on a product line that is connected to a project, building up a threat. So that threat might lead that I need to stop a specific project. All threats, on the other hand, can be seen as opportunities as well. And those opportunities, I want to make sure I capture them very fast as a new idea that I can run into my overall process. So once I have gotten that new idea, I want to make sure that I really look at what was done already before. We already created a lot of information in the previous project that we had to stop. So I can take that and reference it, build a new business case, make a new market analysis for justification, and once all of that idea is accepted, the system will help me building a project out of that automatically. Now, we hand over that project from marketing to project management. The first thing that is being done in project management is that we instantiate the original product line. So instead of having to recreate all of that information, we take what is there, and we probably need to change the artwork. We probably need to create a formula, and maybe we can reuse the original package. So this is a huge difference, and we call that product instantiation. So an instance, creating an instance of a product will have the built-in capabilities to take all the existing information and offer the product manager a choice. What needs to be changed, only changed, what needs to be done from scratch, and what we can reuse without any further change. Now, it makes a huge, huge difference if we have something that we need to change and something that we need to create from scratch and something that we can reuse. Reusing the package means we don't have any efforts in project management. But when I look at all the changes in here, I find that the change in artwork I can do in a very, very agile fashion, probably only giving a due date, but for a new formula, I probably need to apply a proper phase gate plan that gives me events and make sure that all the detailed deliverables for validation and other purposes are being kept in proper management. Once that plan is being approved, again, we are reusing the exact deliverables that we have seen before. So the plan is being driven by the deliverables throughout the timeline. And our policy is that every approach is starting as soon as possible and completely concurrently. While all of those process groups are being executed on the deliverables, all the results will become immediately available to all the different departments. So the artwork department will learn immediately what kind of specification needs to be put on the package. We actually connect those directly, so the specification itself can be transformed into digital assets that can become part of the package. That concurrent design approach and the immediate usage of all the assets before the actual release will not only speed up the complete timeline tremendously, it will also make sure that we have a completely new approach in the release of information. It's not necessary anymore that everything is only checked in the end. Every individual deliverable can be checked for completeness and made a good review at the end of the process with virtually a very, very low delay time in between those reviews. So everything is being reviewed in parallel in the end of the process to achieve technical readiness to launch my production. And obviously, if I get all of that under control, the next change can come very, very easily in here. Now, I do want to demonstrate three of our main key solution features. So one of them is the brand hierarchy. In the brand hierarchy, as I explained before, we have a hierarchy of information ranging from the corporate brand down to individual product lines and the connected information. What we do as well is we have a number of brand standard assets, which might be corporate logos or localized versions. It might be some other information like standardized raw materials, standardized packages, everything that is really relevant for reuse throughout the organization, or even speaking to the market as brand entities, talking about the language, making packages attractive to consumers. So we want to navigate the asset requirements and do an impact analysis in here as well. So when I look at the solution, it really allows me to do that in a very easy fashion. So I took our top brand Siemens, and I'm going to break down into a number of product segments in here. So one of the product segments, food, beverages, and tobacco, will find a number of beverages. So in here, our example data set, actually that was real products that we provided through the Hannover fairs. We have a beer, we have a dairy, and we have a cold brew coffee that was supposed to be handed out during Hannover Fair this year, which unfortunately did not happen. So when I go back to the top brand, all of those obviously should use some standard Siemens assets. So for example, the Siemens Ingenuity for Life logo. The Siemens Ingenuity for Life logo in here is being made available with a different number of languages. So we only have the local regulations in place. What we also have is that the original guidelines connected to the Siemens logo become available in that environment as well. So just by following a simple relation in here, I can find the original PDF document giving me all the necessary instructions on how to use that specific logo. What I will find in here is that, for example, the Siemens logo is a French claim, is actually only valid in Canada and is not supposed to be used in France. It's a little bit tricky, but that is the secrets of marketing in a large organization. Now, the next step is that I want to check which elements have actually made use of that logo in here. So just by going over to the References tab, I can immediately find all assets that have included that specific version of the Siemens logo. So one of the examples is that our cold brew coffee, the latte, is having that Siemens Ingenuity for Life logo inside of the design as well. The real-world implication of being able to handle that kind of standard asset management is pretty strong. So even within our organization, some of our key logos and symbols change on a regular basis from time to time. So it's actually reality that we are now in a time where the Siemens logo, again, will be displayed without the Ingenuity for Life claim. It's a real big effort for the organization to find all the assets that need to be changed in here. So as you can see on the bottom right corner, the PowerPoint template I used for this event has successfully implemented the new logo. But if you're in an organization with a very, very broad portfolio that has a lot of different brand logos, colors, or other imagery, and that needs to be changed on a more or less regular basis, then just the effort of finding all those assets to make sure they go into most change scenarios typically it can be measured in weeks, if not in months. So with the functionality to just go into any kind of brand asset, managing the revision and the release of that asset individually, and immediately being able to have the impact analysis on what needs to be changed because of that is a fantastic capability in our system. The next step is going to be a very, very interesting one, because that is one of our key differentiators in general. What we want to do is we take an existing SKU and we will actually reuse all of the specifications connected to this one. So in the example, we're going to travel to an idea and see that the idea references to existing information. And we define that reuse by leveraging that information. So looking at that example, we're sitting on a campaign that has a new idea about a vegan cold brew coffee being based on the latte that we have seen in the previous movie. So going over to the product and the product variants in here, I can see that there's a lot of interesting information available already in the system that could help me doing the vegan version in here. So I'll find pre-existing artwork. I find a very, very nice package that is environmentally friendly and is very good for reuse. So instead of having to define all the copy one after the next, we have implemented a one-stop dialog in here where I select an existing SKU and I can just define a new product based on that one immediately. So the new product in here is a cold brew coffee based on cocoa and rice. Obviously, that needs a new formula. We want to define an initial SKU in here as well for the German market. So looking at the existing information, the original SKU was intended to come from Germany already. So it's very, very likely I can take over a lot of the existing information from this one. So what I want to do is I want to have the same package, a copy of the artwork, and I will create a new formula for this one. Just by creating that SKU from that dialog, in the background, we will have made sure that we relate the original package, so keep only one of those elements in the database. I will actually have made a copy of the artwork, and I will have the opportunity to create a new formulation for that vegan variant. Even the copy of the artwork will make sure that a number of the assets that are contained inside of the artwork are not being copied as well. So we don't want 5,000 different copies of the Siemens logo, for example, in our repository. The Siemens logo is defined as a fixed asset, so the deep copy procedure that is happening behind that dialog will make sure that those fixed assets remain as individual entities inside of the environment and that only a relation to them is created. So it's one dialog to create a new SKU, and if you consider how much time was saved not only by creating that SKU, the big savings actually come from all the assets that are immediately reused in here, because none of them need to be recreated, and even better, all of those copied assets become available to the designers immediately. So the artwork designer that has to work on the new artwork, instead of having to go search for all that information that can be copied for themselves, they just go to the new SKU, they will find a copy of the original SKU of the base product already being created for them. They start working on their creative implementation for that new product variant immediately. The last step I want to demonstrate is how do we leverage all of those defined deliverables to really drive our planning. So just like you have seen how easy it is to create a new SKU from an existing piece of product information, we take the same approach on really generating new plans. Planning procedures should be straightforward. In essence, most companies know very, very well how products are going to be delivered in the best fashion. The big problem is that if you break it down, the devil is in the details. So if I want to make a copy of an artwork and find the best way forward to generate the new artwork, I typically don't want a full work breakdown structure with all the necessary details. For heaven's sake, it's really only a copy of artwork where I probably need to change a couple of colors, I need to exchange a symbol or an illustration in here and make sure that the specifications that I receive from the R&D department are being incorporated in that design as well. All of that is incredibly straightforward. So if I would actually have a full work breakdown structure that defines individual deliverables that are not relevant for the process in here, it might actually slow me down. So what we want to do is we want to find the best possible way forward, be it very agile or very rigorous, for every individual deliverable individually. And that will form my complete new plan. So what we do inside of the system, we start from an empty project. In here, you see there's only a project timeline, but nothing beneath that yet. With the help of a simple form, I will create a new project timeline from this one. This form will automatically list all the deliverables that are necessary to be done for my new SKUs that are defined for that project in here. So what I see is I have to do 2 new artwork and I have to make a new package for this one. So in here, first I identify when does all the development work starts and when does it all end. So we are working in between approval and technical readiness. And now individually, I visit all those deliverables and I select the best way forward. Modify copied artwork development is a simple template. The new package design is a more thorough template. So I assign the best way forward for each deliverable from a library of smaller templates, really vignettes that together will form my project plan in the end. What I can also do, I don't want to have 2 different sub-projects for the artwork. I will bundle the artwork in one single sub-project. So once I finish my work on that plan, all the necessary generation of the plan will happen in the background. So completing that task will create all the necessary elements. And when I go back to my original timeline, you will see that now we have 2 new sub-projects together with all necessary events, very possibly deliverables or details, whatever is necessary in here. And the package will already relate to the new deliverable being the Cartocan, and the Cold Brew Coffee label sub-project will relate automatically to the Cold Brew Coffee artwork in here, so I can check the current status, all necessary deliverables that are created, and everything else. All 3 of those movies represent the heart and core of what we do during product execution. None of those movies is longer than 3 minutes. So in roughly 2 to 3 minutes, we have done tasks that typically take days to complete, and we ensure that it's not only the task itself that has become much easier, the time saved by having that information recreated, reused instead of recreated, by having that information directly on the fingertips of the developers and designers, all of the time saved in the end will really make sure that the effort is going much lower than before. And also, those sub-projects can immediately execute in parallel, meaning that the impact to time to market will be tremendous based on that new approach in here.
All right, so thanks again to our presenter today, Mr. Frank Brando, and thank you all for joining. With that, the session is closed. Have a good day. Goodbye.